Niners legend Ronnie Lott talking about Alex Smith, a guy you talked about earlier today. Almost made that shot from across the room.
Heartbreak.
Off the backboard, and then it bounced out. Ronnie Lott talking about Alex Smith. Alex Smith, one of the guys who's played on both the Niners and the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yep.
We were talking about that earlier, and Director of Sports Lucas Alexander got in my ear. Not the Alex Smith Bowl, but the Richie James Bowl. Richie James. I remember, what year must it have been? It must have been the 2018 season. It was not a good year. Maybe it was the 2020 season after the Super Bowl loss and then all the injuries, whenever it was. Richie James is like the only active wide receiver that they had that wasn't on the practice squad, and he randomly went off for like 12 catches and 180 yards in a loss, probably.
Was it against the Giants?
It might have been against the Giants. I don't know. You could look through Richie James's game log and find it pretty quickly because I'm sure it would stick out like a sore thumb because he has not had the most impressive NFL career. But I remember that randomly he went off one game because everyone else was out with an injury. But that's another Chief and Niner crossover. Richie James, the great Richie James.
A lot of crossover, over the years when you get guys who play a long time in the NFL, especially journeyman style like Richie James. You're going to find your way to a team, and if it happens to be the Chiefs, then so be it. And, it's like Patrick McCaw, who he's got 4 rings. McCaw, or at least 3. He had 2 with the Warriors, and he won 1 with Toronto. He
won a championship his first 3 years in the league.
Right.
And with the 2 different teams.
Exactly.
2 with the Warriors, and then 1 with the Raptors.
And that's the way that goes sometimes, where you just happen to be a guy on a team that wins, and, you get a ring. So there you go.
Does Jerick McKinnon count? Never played in the regular season for the Niners, but was a Niner.
I wonder. I don't think that counts. I mean, he wasn't on the practice squad. He was just hurt,
He
right?
just was hurt, yeah.
And then he never played. And then
never played a regular season snap with the Niners.
Yeah, I don't think that counts then.
Yeah, probably
at least
not.
In my book.
How about Kyle Williams? Did you know he was a Chief for 1 game?
Did he play?
Yeah, he got in the game.
That's crazy. I didn't realize that.
Oh, remember... Oh, God. The Niners and Chiefs swapped terrible first-round wide receiver picks. Do you remember? The Niners drafted a receiver out of Illinois...
A.J. Jenkins.
And then they swapped him for the A.J. Jenkins of the Chiefs. Also a first-round wide receiver who was terrible.
John Baldwin?
John Baldwin. That's exactly who it was.
You guys are pulling these out.
Yes.
Impressive.
They just straight up swap, and they both did nothing for either team. But those are a couple of more former Niner and former Chief, John Baldwin and A.J. Jenkins.
There you go. Not exactly household names.
No.
A.J. Jenkins was during a run where it was basically stop drafting wide receivers.
Please, dear God, stop.
But they found a way to get it right with Debo and Jawan Jennings, another one. And hopefully Ricky Pearsall, who I would imagine he went through the practice today. I didn't see any of the social media coming out. Practice is probably about over by now, but his window opened today, so hopefully Ricky can be another in the long line of successful draft picks for the Niners.
He did practice, and he did break down the huddle.
Oh.
Fred Warner made him break down the huddle.
That's
big
cool.
day.
That's
big day
cool.
for the vibes.
That's got to be an awesome moment for him, though, legitimately. I mean, his first training camp, his first preseason as an NFL player, he's dealing with injuries, like football-related injuries. Can't even really stay on the practice field that often. Then he finally gets cleared and ready to play. You're, 9 days away from the opener.
Yep.
And he's out shopping in Union Square, a couple of blocks from us right here, after doing an autograph session, I think down in Daly City or somewhere else.
Cow Palace, I believe.
Yeah,
Yep.
and comes up here to enjoy himself on an off day, and he gets into a scuffle and gets shot, survives, and now is ready to actually begin football playing just like a couple of months later. It's crazy
Right.
how this has all turned out, and you got to imagine that's kind of an emotional and a morale boost for a team that maybe doesn't necessarily need it coming off of a win, but it definitely can't do anything bad for the team.
Yeah, and I don't know if they need it, but just to see that player out on the field and actually be cleared to play and cleared to at least start the ramp up to get ready to play, that's emotional for all those guys because, they knew what Ricky went through, and Ricky reportedly told the team that was having a party that night, the night of the day that he got shot, and said, I don't want you to not have fun. I'm going to be okay, and go ahead and have your event, and I'll catch up with you when I can. And it was 2 days later, I think, that he was out of practice.
Yeah.
After being shot.
And then opening night, the week 1 Monday Night Football was his birthday.
Wow.
And he's out there with the law enforcement. I apologize. I can't remember her name off the top of my head, who helped save his life. And they're out there on the field together before week number 1, which had to have been just an amazing moment. And can't wait to see him back out on the field. Obviously, just so thankful that he's all right and okay. But you're right. I mean, the Niners have been better at drafting those skill positions of late, maybe other than running back. Jordan Mason obviously has been good as well, and he's now in his 3rd year. He was not even drafted. I think undrafted rookie.
Yep.
So they've had more success at those positions, and you hope that Ricky Pearsall does continue that for the 49ers going forward. But yeah, we're just getting ready for Niners and Chiefs. It is Chiefs week here on 95.7 The Game. And as a reminder that coming up on Wednesday in 2 days, we will be broadcasting live from John Madden Studio as we remember the great John Madden. Members of the Madden family will be in attendance. Of course, so will Willard and Dibs hosting their show. And Steve Mariucci will join the show live on site at 3 o'clock. So looking forward to that coming up on Wednesday here on 95.7 The Game. But Dibs, we were talking about Patrick Mahomes versus Brock Purdy earlier today. I know I was kind of out on an island saying that Patrick Mahomes has had, not on an island saying he's had a poor season, certainly for his standards. It's not good. 6 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. But Brock Purdy has been more of a driving force to his team's success than Brock Purdy has so far this season. I could even go a step further, Dibs, because so many of the arguments that any person discussing Brock Purdy uses, so many of the classic arguments against Brock Purdy are what? They're things like he's a product of the system.
Yep.
His weapons catch the ball and they turn it into big gains because they are elite, not because Brock Purdy is elite. He doesn't push the ball down the field. He finds the easy completions underneath, all of that, right? Like that's common arguments used against Brock Purdy. Would you call me crazy, Dibs, if I told you all those arguments fit one of these 2 quarterbacks in this upcoming matchup, and it's not Brock Purdy?
Yeah, I don't think that would be that crazy, especially having watched a lot of the Kansas City Chiefs this year, and you realize what they have and what Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and company have been forced to do. They've been forced to play in a different fashion, and they are yet to score 30 points in a game, and they are 5-0. They've got 27 as their high water mark, and that was against Baltimore in the opener, the Thursday night opener, and they won that game, but they've won with 17, they won with 22, and they've had to win ugly because they don't have a very good offense. And I mentioned it last hour that Jordan Mason has more yards rushing than the entirety of the Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City has 589 yards total running the ball, and that is through 8 different guys who have carried the ball. And that includes Mahomes and Xavier Worthy, of course. Travis Kelce also has a carry, incidentally. He's got a 1-yard carry on the year, but you've had Kareem Hunt, Isaiah Pacheco, and Carson Steele and Samaje Perine have been your primary ball carriers. And so none of those guys is a household name. None of them is actually very good. Pacheco is good, but he's been hurt. So you can't run the ball. And when it comes to throw the ball, you've got your number 1 receiver, Rashee Rice, who's been out. Travis Kelce is having kind of a quiet year. Your rookie, Xavier Worthy, is really a bit of a one-trick pony at this point in his career. He's a speed burner, and if you can't get him free over the top, then he's not really that usable. Then you've got Juju Smith-Schuster, Noah Gray, Justin Watson, Mecole Hardman. You've got nothing.
The who's who of...
You've got nothing as an offense. You have no ground game, and offensively you have 2 weapons. A one-trick pony who runs a 4.2 40 and a really good tight end who sneakily is now 35 years old. So I don't know what you expect from Patrick Mahomes when you've got no ground game and you've got virtually no air game.
Yeah. We'll get back to that in a sec. First, you're listening to 95.7 The Game, KGMZ FM and HD1 San Francisco, and Odyssey Sports Station, always live on the free Odyssey app, Twitch, and YouTube, powered by First NorCal Credit Union. For a low-rate auto loan, apply online or just ask for First NorCal financing at the dealer. Want to dive more into that in a second, Dibs? But first, we do got to make the people some money, if you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, let's
It is
go.
Monday evening, and it's time to fade the Dibbers.
It's time for
Fade the Dibbers.
Please explain.
Nostradamus gives out his pick. You bet against it, you make money.
Cash me out one time.
It's that simple.
Hey, Dibs, your pick's stink.
Dibs. What's the lock of the day?
The point spread, Dibs, it is 1.5. The Bills -1.5 or the Jets +1.5.
Pretty easy one for me, and I'm one win away from officially being hot.
You've won 2 in a row.
I gave you the Thursday night Niner lock, and that one was really not in much doubt. And I gave you a Sunday night lock just because I'm a giver. Dibber Claus gives, and Dibber Claus won again with Cincinnati. That one was very much in doubt. There's an expression, Grandi, called the dead cat bounce, and I think that it is based mostly in politics, but... And I don't,
dead cat bounce?
Yeah, I don't want to be too graphic, but if you drop a dead cat, the dead cat will bounce. And it's just a fact. And in this case, the dead cat or cogitated at the very least for both of those moves to happen. It's an offense that's been struggling with a new coordinator, play caller, and a new head coach. I would expect the Jets, much like a dead cat, to bounce.
Wow.
I'm taking the Jets. And the point. Carter, I said, cuckoo. Whoa, killed the music and brought the lock. Oh, you brought that.
Yeah, I did that.
Attaboy.
So Jets +1.5 is the
Love
pick.
it.
Yes.
I have some news for you. That is the same pick that one Daryl the Guru Johnson has made. So this is making it very easy for everyone else in the audience.
That's my guru. In finance, a dead cat bounce is a small, brief recovery in the price of a declining stock.
Okay, so you're thinking a win for the Jets, and then they'll go back to their normal struggling ways?
Possibly, yeah. I do think that with a new play caller and a new head coach, there will be renewed vigor in the locker room. And so I'm playing on the dead cat bounce. And I think Buffalo with their injury concerns, and I know that Cook is out.
Yeah, James Cook starting.
I alerted Mark Willard, my partner, and he's adjusted his fantasy lineup. So nice try, you guys, trying to subvert my my partner who's under the weather. I got your back, Mark Willard.
Who did he pick up?
Oh, you just put in Khalil Shakir, rather, into his lineup because he had him in the flex spot.
That's smart managing right there for Mark Willard.
is
Keep
elite
your
management.
Monday night guys in your flex.
There you
to
go.
Give you all the flexibility
Just
you
in
need.
case. Chestnut checkers, Chickering.
In this bit, if you are new to the bit, Dibs makes a pick and everyone else bets against it. If you were to do that so far, you'd be even because you are 9-9-1 on the season, Dibs.
So I'd be down because the juice.
You'd be down because of the juice.
I'd be down 0.9 units. But after today, I'm back, baby. I'm back. You take the Jets and the points go. Look at you. You found it.
That was me.
Again. Chickering is struggling in there.
He'll be fine.
Yeah, you got the buzzer. That's good.
That's all you need, really. You just need the buzzer. That's all you need for
Anyway,
that job.
dead cat bounce.
All right, Jets plus a 1.5 is the pick.
Thank you. Yeah.
Feels like a weird line to me. I don't know.
It's a weird one, but yeah.
Lean into the weirdness, I suppose. Lean into the weirdness. Anyway, we were talking Niners, Chiefs, Brock Purdy, Patrick Mahomes, and I was telling you how, and you laid out a lot of really good points, Dibs, about how maybe just the overall construction of the Chiefs offense, especially given their recent injuries, kind of lends to what we're talking about with Patrick Mahomes and some of the analytics. Let me just talk to you about this here for a sec. Okay, first of all, one of the arguments used against Brock Purdy is all of his elite weapons, all the all-pros around him, the Yak Bros, right? With George Kittle and Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk and Christian McCaffrey. They turn a 5-yard catch into a 20-yard game because they are elite after the catch with the ball in their hands. What if I told you that Brock Purdy is 31st in the NFL in percentage of his passing yards that come after the catch, which means, generally speaking, Niners receivers, Niners pass catchers do not run with the ball in their hands. They catch the ball and they get tackled relatively quickly, or at least faster than almost any other team in the NFL. Who has the highest percentage of passing yards that come after the catch? That would be none other than Patrick Mahomes. How about average depth of target, Dibs, or air yards per attempt?
Yeah.
Essentially the same thing. Generally speaking, it means how far down the field is your quarterback throwing the ball before it gets caught, where it is targeted, where the receiver is when the ball gets to him. Brock Purdy is first among quarterbacks with at least 5 starts this year. Patrick Mahomes, lowest among all starters in terms of average depth of target of his throws. So not only are these arguments that are being used against Brock Purdy wrong and lazy, they are completely opposite of the truth. He is on the far other extreme of this, and it's kind of funny because every argument or those arguments used against Brock Purdy not only are wrong for him, but could be turned around and used accurately and correctly on Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes this season has been a check down, dink and dunk quarterback. Not that he can't throw the ball down the field. He certainly can. We've seen it over and over and over again. This year, he's been a dink and dunk quarterback, while Brock Purdy has aired the ball out unlike any other quarterback in the NFL.
No doubt. And you look at the personnel and you look at the success rate of what Kansas City's done, and you can understand it. And I'm looking at completed air yards per pass attempt, which is how far the ball travels when you actually complete it. Brock is number 1 and Mahomes is number 29. His completed air yards per attempt is 2.7. So that is the epitome of dink and dunk, which tells you that when he's throwing it and he's completing it, his average is about 3 yards. And he's getting a lot of a lot of yards after the catch, much more than Brock Purdy, because when you throw the ball deep down the field, a lot of times those are catches that are either out of bounds by the sideline or caught and then tackled, so you don't have the same ability. So these offenses have kind of flip-flopped on what we all expected them to be or what the prevailing notion was about these offenses, and that makes me even more impressed by Patrick Mahomes than ever before, because I ran off the names of the guys he is either handing it to or throwing it to, and the majority of these guys are not legitimate frontline starters in the NFL. But
to be fair, he's not going to have Rashee Rice going forward, but he's essentially had Rashee Rice for every game leading up to this point. He got hurt midway through their last game, but has had him for basically the entire time that they've played together this season.
He's played 4 games, so 4 of the 5. Rashee Rice.
One. Yeah, you're right.
And he's got 29 targets, which in 4 games, 29 targets, not a lot. And it's because they're not throwing it that much. And Kelsey's got 31 targets, and Worthy's got 21. And other than that, Schuster with 12, Noah Gray, 11, Samaje Perine with 9. They aren't throwing the ball very often, and when they're running it, they're not running it that successfully. So this offense is really about, getting field goals. They have a very good field goal kicker, and it's about avoiding mistakes if they can, although he does have 6 interceptions through the 5 games. This Kansas City offense kind of resembles, for me, a little bit like the Harbaugh 49ers, where you're trying to beat teams 13-12 if you can. And we all think about Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, and we think about a guy who's just back there slinging it. And that's not Kansas City. And it wasn't last year, which adds to the frustration over how you were unable to win the Super Bowl, because that was not the high-flying Kansas City team that beat you the first time in the Super Bowl, where, remember, it was like, God, if we can just keep Mahomes off the field, and Tyreek Hill, and Travis Kelce. And
he beat you deep once, and that was enough.
That was it. But, you did so well to keep him off the field until there was 6 minutes left, and they scored, and you gave it up, and they scored again, and you gave it up, and they scored again, and all of a sudden, you got run out of the building. This Kansas City team this year resembles last year's Kansas City team, which is a much more physical, grind you out kind of an offense and a defense.
And to be fair to them, they didn't want to have to do this.
Right.
They went out and they acquired Hollywood Brown this offseason. They have Rashee Rice, who was a rookie last year and was good down the stretch, but was looking to turn to a different level, and through his first 4 games he was awesome. I know we get caught up in the fantasy world. He was one of the top fantasy receivers, and with Mahomes throwing him the ball, he's just one of the best receivers, period, in the NFL. He gets hurt. Hollywood hasn't played a single snap and is already out for the season. You drafted Xavier Worthy, And now he's one of your only receivers still standing that was on the team in the preseason. So they didn't want to have to do this again, but it looks like they're going to have to do this again. And I get, and I see the texts coming in on the Comcast Business text line right now. The 510, Mahomes is getting it done with a lot less. Niners are built better. Also, their formula is different, but they're the best team in the league. They're doing it, and they're getting the job done with less, but it's not pretend that the 5-0 record means Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs' offense has been as impressive as Brock Purdy and the Niners' offense. If the Chiefs' defense was the Niners' defense, Dibs, I would venture a guess the Niners would probably be 6-0. Like, some of the reason why the Niners had lost a handful of their games hasn't been because of anything that the Niners have done offensively. We talk so much about red zone inefficiency and about some of their issues, and there are a lot of them, and I want to talk about them, but they still put up 32 points, 17 points, 24 points, 30 points, 23 points, 36 points. That's a good chunk of points through 6 weeks, despite the fact that you're without McCaffrey, despite that Debo missed a game, despite that George Kittle missed a game, and those three all missed the same game, by the way. The offense hasn't been problem number one for the 49ers this year, not by a stretch. It's just you haven't had complimentary football all the way around, and that's what's caused them the 3 losses.
Yeah, and you've had mistakes at critical times, and that's what's cost you those ball games. Against the Rams, you had 5 mistakes over the last 12 plays of the game. You had a Moody missed field goal. You had a big punt return that you gave up. You had a 50-yard pass interference on Charvarius Mooney-Ward, and all these plays collectively cost you a ball game. And you had Devondre Campbell commit a PI as well. And the Ward was a 50-yard pass play that he gave up, not a PI. Yeah. It was to Juju, or to a Tutu, I'm sorry, not Juju, but Tutu Atwell. And then the Campbell pass interference, you remember, which is what set up the field goal. So complimentary football is one thing, but avoiding late game mistakes is another. And Kansas City is the kind of team that you could, in theory, if you do it the Shanahan way, you get the ball in your first possession, you score a touchdown. And then you get the lead, you run the ball, you possess the ball, you control the clock, you win the game. That is the number one Shanahan blueprint. Unfortunately, against Kansas City in these big games, you've done it other than the last part of it, which is you win the game. You've gotten leads, you've controlled games, and then you haven't been able to get the knockout punch.
I also think part of this, and I don't want to dive too far into the X's and O's and all the numbers, and I know we're still 6 days away from the game, and you might think me giving out these Purdy numbers, and he's slinging the ball down the field, and his A-dot average depth of target, essentially it just means they're aggressively throwing the ball down the field. You might hear me talking about it in the way my tone is and think that's a good thing. Like, I want my teams and my quarterbacks to be doing it that way. Honestly, no. I don't think Brock Purdy should be leading the NFL in average depth of target or air yards per attempt or air yards per completion. That's difficult to do. Generally, if you're doing that, you're going to have a low completion percentage. You're also going to throw a decent amount of interceptions because it's not rocket science. The further you throw the ball, the more difficult throw it is. And what I thought the Niners did a lot better in the second half in Seattle was, or really the whole game in Seattle, was take the easy completions. Brock Purdy said at postgame on Thursday, Dibs, he said, well, I just had a plan. No matter what the Seahawks were doing, diagnosed what was happening, and took whatever they gave us. If they were doing X, I threw to Z. If they were doing Y, I threw to X, so on and so forth. And he did a really good job at that. He checked it down a little bit more. And I think that's where the Niners had kind of gotten a little bit out of their, mojo offensively. They were so aggressive throwing the ball early in the season and pushing the ball down the field and not looking for Kittle on a quick out, not looking for Jordan Mason or Kyle Juszczyk, who was involved in the passing game against the Seahawks. And it's part of the reason why Patrick Mahomes is up near 70% completion percentage, because he's throwing all those easy completions underneath. And I think the Niners need to be better at that. So this isn't just the deeper your targets are, the better, because that means you're going to complete passes that result in 20, 25, 30-yard gains. you also got to take what the defense is giving you. And at a certain point, defenses are going to adjust to all the deep shots you're taking, and there's going to be so much open underneath that the Niners up to this point hadn't really taken advantage of yet.
And I also think that from the Seattle game, they ran a lot more play action than they had in the past, and that's something that I certainly had been waiting for, and many fans have been waiting for. Set up the run game, and then the pass comes off of the run game through play action, and I saw them run a lot more play action against Seattle, and they've been toward the bottom in terms of play action pass attempts this year, and that's exactly what you're talking about against Seattle, where it was a lot of shorter, intermediate, down the middle throws that was set up through the play action pass game, and you had Mason going early, and then he got hurt, and Garendo was effective, and you had Debo and Taylor was effective running the ball, so you were able to do a lot of the play action stuff off of that. And I would look for that to kind of be the blueprint against Kansas City going forward. We don't know officially who's going to be in or out at running back. You hope that Mason's able to play through it and be out there. But if he's not, Garendo sure looked effective. And Taylor hadn't carried the ball at all this year, and he had some good, tough runs in that game. So no matter who it is personnel-wise, I would look for Shanahan to do more of that, of the play action game again.
The play, you hit on something that I wanted to focus on as well. Play action. I've been, for 5 weeks, been screaming, where the hell is the play action, Dibs? Through 5 weeks, the 49ers had used play action on only 17.6% of all dropbacks.
Wow.
17, not all plays, but every time Brock Purdy drops back to pass. Play action on 17.6% of those. That number was up to near 30%, Dibs, in Week 6 against the Seahawks. And the numbers, while it is a relatively small sample size through just 6 weeks, the numbers are pretty stark. Brock Purdy, when throwing off of play action, 72% completion percentage. It's down near 64% not with play action, so a difference of about 8%. He has not thrown an interception off of play action. He has thrown 4 without play action. And his quarterback passer rating goes from 133 down to 92.6.
Yeah.
From play action to not. I know that it's a small sample size, but largely the Niners' bread and butter has been make the defense think a run is coming and then throw the ball. And they really haven't done a lot of that so far this year. It feels like, I mean, how many times did we talk about it when the Rams felt like they knew what was coming? And it happened on the other side of the ball, too, when Matt Stafford felt like he knew what the Niners' defense was doing. But also the same was true on the flip side. It felt like defenses knew what the Niners were going to be doing offensively. And that second half in Seattle felt like the first time in a while where Shanahan and the offense was mixing it up, and the Seahawks weren't really able to pinpoint what was coming on any given play.
Right, and I do think that it helps for Brock Purdy to get into a little bit more of a rhythm, because what I've seen this year is exactly what you laid out when you talked about the stats of the yards, the air yards, the intended air yards, and all the rest of it. Is Kyle Shanahan has encouraged him and designed plays for him to throw the ball down the field. They've pushed it down the field more than we ever saw Jimmy Garoppolo do.
By a mile,
because he didn't trust Jimmy Garoppolo, and even more than what we saw Brock Purdy do last year, because Brock is healthier, he has a better grasp of the offense, and now you're trying to push the envelope a little bit, and I think they lead the NFL in explosives, which are runs of more than 10 yards and passes of more than 20 yards, and a lot of that is because of Shanahan trusting Brock Purdy to push it down the field, but I felt like they've fallen a little bit too much in love with pushing the ball down the field.
I agree.
And Mark and I had this discussion last week, and he was giving me the look of like, do you hear what you're saying? Because all we've all said for years or months is like, throw it deep, run a 9 route, push it down the field. And now they're doing that a lot. And people like me are saying, stop throwing it down the field so much. How about a screen? How about a draw? How about play action? And I do think against Seattle, this is why I thought Shanahan had a tremendous game, is they mixed it up a lot. More play action, more quick throws to the middle, a couple of screens here and there. And I think against Kansas City, that's going to be critical because Kansas City does have such a good defense, especially their front.
There was one drive, I think it was in the first half. I think it was in the first quarter. And I can look up the game log and figure out exactly what it was. The Niners had first and goal from the 10, I believe.
Yep.
And they ran it on first down.
Mason got 3
yards. Yeah,
yep,
so then second and goal from the 7. And I think they lined up Mason in the shotgun. Then they motioned him out to the left.
Yep.
So they go empty. Second and goal from the 7.
Yeah.
defense knows, okay, we're passing here. No matter what, we're passing
you're
here.
reading my notes right now.
And they
11 personnel, and they go empty. One running back, one tight end.
And they throw it short left to Jordan Mason. I think Purdy was pressured. The throw was a little off.
I have here
incomplete.
Pooney beaten. Pooney was beaten on the play.
One of the few times
he got the right
beaten.
guard, yeah.
And
he gave up a couple pressures, and this was one of them.
Purdy pressured, throw to Mason, incomplete. Now you have a 3rd and goal from the 7, and now the defense knows, guess what? You have to throw it again. And they threw, and it was incomplete. Again, I forget who this one was targeting.
To Debo, and they went empty again. Yeah. 11 personnel, one running back, one tight end. I'm going to get this out now before Greg Cosell on Wednesday tells me I'm wrong, which is coming. But they went 11 personnel empty, no running back with Brock Purdy, and it was Kyle Juszczyk was the running back. No Mason, no anybody else. It was Juszczyk and Kittle, and then they targeted Debo on 3rd and 7 out of an empty set. No good, and then they end up kicking the field goal.
And that's exactly what I'm talking about. I know 3rd and 7 generally, and it's even more difficult in the red zone, but 3rd and 7 is usually always a passing down. But it was the 1st and 10 play, and it was the 2nd and 10 play where you didn't have to necessarily make it so obvious what you were doing, and the 1st and goal from the 10 wasn't necessarily obvious, but a 1st down play, you're probably going to run the ball. And the defense could have probably assumed that, and they could have sold out for it, and they only allowed a gain of 3. And then on 2nd and goal from the 7, where you could do either, you have time and space and the wherewithal to do either, you go empty, and the defense says, well, okay, we know you're passing this ball, and it forces an incomplete. And I know it's difficult to kind of disguise when you don't have the ultimate weapon in disguise in Christian McCaffrey. And part of the Niners' issue has been when they get in those passing downs, you don't have to, but to help out your chances of completing a pass, you feel like you should take Jordan Mason out of the game and bring in Juszczyk because he's a much better pass catcher than Mason is. But by doing that, you're also telling the offense or telling the defense, we're passing. You're ready to defend a pass. We're not running. Who's going to run the ball here? Unless Debo comes in motion or lines up in the backfield, there's no one that's going to carry the ball. So that's been one of my major issues throughout the season with the 49ers. They have turned their offense very predictable. But the second half in Seattle, you saw more play action. You saw more passes on generally rushing downs. You saw more runs. I think there was like a 3rd and 7 draw, and they picked up the 1st down. There was more of that. And when you're facing off against the Chiefs, that defense and Steve Spagnuolo, who seems to generally have Shanahan's number, I think you're going to need more of that. It'll be hard without McCaffrey, no doubt, but you're going to need more, I think, creativity and kind of breaking trends to get stuff done against the Chiefs.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I do want to highlight the Arizona game, and I talked about this before, where it was 1st and goal at the 5, and they went with 2 running backs and 2 tight ends, 22 personnel, and they went empty, and they put Salbert all the way out to the wide side of the field, and Kittle was right in his normal spot, off the line a little bit in the slot, and they ran that quick little Kittle in cut, and it was boom, touchdown from the 5. That was a play that nobody saw coming with 2 running backs and 2 tight ends. Normally, you'd have the tight ends in tight and Juszczyk in front of Mason, and you'd run power football, but they spread it out wide out of that personnel group. I thought that was a very creative play call out of that personnel group, and I think that Shanahan in the game against Seattle did get a little bit more creative in the red zone, which is how they cashed in 3 more times in the second half in the red zone. But I'm with you on that first one where, I even wrote it down. They went empty on 2nd and 7.
Made no sense.
Yeah, I'd like to see him, maybe run it there for 2 or 3, and now it's 3rd and 4.
Or at the very least, just keep a running back in and make defense respect the threat of it.
No doubt. No doubt. And you were mentioning the play action, and I'm looking at my notes. After, Seattle punts, it's 3-0. You get the ball back, and it's play action to Debo, 76 yards for the touchdown.
Kind of an awkward play, but it was off play action.
Yeah, play action, and he throws it behind Debo on purpose because the safety's coming over late. If he leads Debo might no longer be with us because that safety was coming full speed to knock his block off, but the throw was in a spot where Debo could go get it. Unlike DK Metcalf, who doesn't go back for the ball, Debo does, caught it and got the yak and took that one to the house.
I think the other thing that the play action specifically impacts, and it's probably why you see Purdy's numbers so much better off play action than not, is it's that the 49ers offense generally has been geared around attacking the middle of the field, Dibs. And maybe some of this is just kind of like left over from the Jimmy Garoppolo era because he was a little limited with what he could do. And maybe Shanahan kind of adjusted to that. But still, that's generally where Brock Purdy is at his best as well. Although we know he can make throws outside of the numbers, like that first touchdown pass to George Kittle against the Seahawks. One of the best throws I've ever seen him make. And it was from the left hash, about the 17-yard line, all the way to the front right pylon on a line. Perfect throw. An incredible pass.
Yeah, to start the third quarter.
Yeah, and that was the first red zone score they had of the night. Snapped the 0-for-2 beginning on red zone touchdown drives. So Purdy obviously can do that. But I think still where the Niner offense is at its best, Dibs, and where they will be challenged against the linebackers of the Chiefs is throwing to the middle part of the field. And what opens that up is the threat of the run game and using play action, because what happens when the linebackers think a run is coming? Well, they kind of get sucked up to the line of scrimmage. It opens up the middle of the field, and suddenly you've got a lot of space there to throw to Ayuk, to Debo, to Kittle, to Jawan, to whoever it is running across the middle of the field. But if you're going empty and you're trying to throw middle, you got those two linebackers hanging out in their zones 15 yards from the line of scrimmage, and it's harder to sneak those balls in there. So I think that's also where it impacts. It opens up the middle part of the field, which generally is where Brock Purdy and the offense is at their best.
Yeah, Kittle and certainly Ayuk is so good at those in-breaking routes, and Purdy has been just elite at getting that ball over the linebackers and in front of the safeties, especially as so many teams like to play that two-deep zone now, and there is area between the linebackers, especially if you have play action. You run a little play action, the linebackers do cheat up instinctively, and then there's room over there, over the top and in front of the safeties, and that's where Ayuk and Kittle have been so dangerous. And I'm just looking at some of these other plays, and the play action back-to-back on that drive where they stalled out in the red zone. You got Ayuk for 16, Kittle for 3, back-to-back play actions, and it was definitely working. And Purdy out of that pistol with the quick fake, and then it's just boom, the ball's out. It takes the pressure off him, and it helps the offense get in rhythm.
Yeah, and if your offensive line can hold the blocks for a little bit longer, then the play action can work. The 408 also saying, I read that play action does not allow Purdy time to read defenses, so they sometimes get away from it, especially earlier in the season. Yeah, I mean, you do need your offensive line to give the quarterback a little bit more time to allow the play to develop and allow the linebackers or whoever it is, a crashing corner, to think that the run is coming and allow the quarterback to stand in the pocket and deliver a throw that might take a little bit longer. So that is part of it as well. The offensive line, I thought against Seattle was very good. That might be a little bit of a different challenge against the Chiefs. Like if you just have Chris Jones getting past Pooney or McKivitz or whoever it is that he's going up against, and the Niners are carrying out a play action fake, then Purdy turns around and he sees Chris Jones on top of him. Well, guess what? Play action is not going to work there. So it is a lot of factors and characteristics and a lot of pieces that have to work together to make it work. But when they all work together, there's no other better formation set scheme for the Niners offense than play action. I mean, it's been their bread and butter for as long as Shanahan has been here.
Yep, and they have to be able to run the ball, and they have to be able to establish it to make Kansas City respected. And I'm looking at the numbers, and Kansas City is 4th in football in yards per attempt allowed on the ground, only 3.7 allowed. You've got Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and Minnesota tied for 2nd, and then Kansas City. And I think about that Minnesota game where running yards, rushing yards were a little hard to come by, and you can't abandon the run, and Shanahan won't. He's really good at staying with it, but it brings me back to the question about J.P. Mason and what his status will be as we get deeper in the week. He's coming off of a shoulder injury, and he had 1 carry in the third quarter coming out of the locker room, and I would imagine he got some treatment in the locker room, and he came out, he had 8 yards on that carry, and then that was it. He couldn't continue, and he ran out of bounds to the sideline, and then he didn't come back in the game. So if you don't have J.P. Mason, and I'm assuming that you probably won't, I don't know, and we'll get a medical opinion from Doc Pandia tomorrow, cleared to play UCSF Medical, but based on the injury, you may want to give him another week, and if you can give him 2 weeks, then you get a 3rd week because of the bye, and that might put a little bit of extra pressure on Garendo, but also Debo Samuel as your as a possible wide back again.
Yeah.